Hi there, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'll be working on my weeping willow here in the bonsai zone. Weeping willows aren't that common as a bonsai because they tend to die back a lot, and that's happened on my tree. I had quite a full canopy on it, and then most of it died off. You can see on the right hand side there. So I'm starting it again. I've got a new leader growing, and today I'm going to do a restyle. All this part of my willow is dead wood, and it kind of spoils the flow of the tree. If I bring my eye from the base of the tree and follow it up the trunk line, I kind of go up to the deadwood part, and then it just kind of stops. So I'm going to have to remove that deadwood, so your eye then follows the trunk line up to the new leader here and up into the canopy. I like this deadwood, it's quite interesting, but it just takes away from the design of the tree. In nature, willows don't really have deadwood because the wood rots quite easily and it just falls off in a storm. I've got all kinds of new growth coming out all over the trunk of the willow, and I've delayed pruning because I want to see what branches and trunk lines are alive. So now that I can see all this new growth coming in, I can tell what's died off in the winter and what's still alive. Sometimes on the willows, branches that you think are dead, this one looks dead, is actually alive, and you can see the new buds coming out on that. Some branches like this one, you can tell the tip is dead, there's no new buds on it, but this portion of the branch is still alive and it's got some new buds coming out. I also delayed pruning off the dead part of the tree because I wanted to be sure what parts of the tree were alive and what parts of the tree were dead. I didn't want to go pruning off this part of the tree if it was still alive and had buds coming out on it. After waiting a few years, I can now see the living part of the tree clearly, so I can safely prune off the dead portion. The dead portion of the tree is quite brittle. I could probably break it off by hand. I'm just going to try part of it up here. Yeah, it breaks off quite easily. So I'm wondering if I should just break off the dead portion of the tree by hand to give a natural kind of transition. I'm going to see how tough it is. It's coming quite easily actually, like that. There I go. Let's go in and look at that wound now. Here's a look at the wound here. So I can do a little further peeling of the dead portion, getting it down to the living part of the tree. I can see a collar here where the living tissue is forming a scar. I will have to remove this one branch coming up here. I'm looking at the styling of the tree. The main trunk comes up on the angle, then it goes this way, and this branch kind of doesn't look good. If it were coming out to form a Y shape here, it might look better. So I do have some buds behind it here, and there are some buds on here. It's possible I could train part of it in this direction, or I could just remove it and make this a bend. And I think it's a little low to make the canopy of the tree here. I think I want to see this trunk line and then have the canopy up here. So I think I'm going to prune that branch right off. I don't think it suits the design of the tree. This is the tub of water that I wash the roots of my trees in. And as you can see, the ducks just come in and help themselves to my water. I'll come in now and remove this upright branch here. I'll just cut it off flush for now. To there. Fairly long, vigorous branch. Then I want to clean up this transition. This trunk kind of comes up and ends here, and then this trunk line comes off a little lower. So I'll probably want to kind of integrate this deadwood wound back here and remove some of this living tissue up top here, just to make it all flow a little better. So I'm going to do a little nibbling here. This is still deadwood here. Now there's a little bit of living tissue now we're just starting to get into, or I am. Take quite a chunk off here. This is a live vein coming up here, so I probably want to keep that. I think as it grows, it'll heal over here quite nicely. So that's probably all I can do in this part for now. My next operation will be to remove all the dead parts of the tree. So like this branch here. There's a dead one out the back here. This branch is alive up to about here, and then the whole top's died off, so I can remove that. You can see on the apex of the tree that part of the apex is died back. These two branches are alive, but this whole section is dead, so I'll remove that. I finished pruning off all the dead parts of the tree, so everything left now is a living branch on the tree, so I can go in and style it now. I'm actually happy with most of the branches on the tree. There's a few I can take out, like this one here. It's not growing in a good direction. I'll have to prune back the height of the tree, so I'll pick outward facing buds here. And I think here. That's got the height down. I do have a lot of branches growing from one spot here. I'll show you that. Here's a look at that junction point. I've got 1, 2, 3, and the main trunk. That's 4 branches growing from one spot. Normally on a tree I would prune some of them off to get it just growing from, maybe 1 or 2 branches in that area. But on a willow tree, dieback is quite common, so I'm going to leave those branches on as a backup plan, just in case one branch dies off. I think this is quite a nice front for the tree. The trunk has a nice flowing line going up to the apex. So next I'm going to clean up the root base. Once again, the moss is climbing up the trunk, so I'll have to come in and pick it out. Any weeds. You can see some of the roots growing from the trunk here down into the soil, some new roots. This happens every year. I get roots growing from the root base down into the soil, which is good. It kind of makes that buttressed root base even larger. But I don't want the moss here because it will rot away the bark of the willow at the base here, and you might get an inverse taper look to the trunk. So I pick it all away. A lot of this bark is quite flaky here. I'm going to take part of it off. I don't want it that flaky. To me, flaky bark can look really good, but there's a point where it gets too flaky, where it looks like, you wouldn't see something like that in nature. If you look at trees in nature, most of them from the distance kind of have a smooth look to the bark. They have texture to it, like ridges and crevices and that, but they don't have all that flaky bark hanging off them. Where you'd be afraid to touch the base of the tree because you'd ruin the bark texture. I don't like that kind of flaky bark. It just makes the whole tree look really delicate to me. Like you'd be afraid to touch it. It doesn't look miniature to me either. Looks like a tree that's been very carefully handled not to damage the bark at all. Get rid of some of this lichen off the trunk too, and some of this loose bark. I've got the base of the tree all cleaned up now, so let's go in and have a look. Here's the front view, so I'll spin it around. You can see there's a nice radial root base developing on the tree, and it's also causing it to get a nice trunk flare at the base. So, yeah, all those years of root pruning, you can kind of see what it does in the long term. The willow can go back on the bench now, and I'll be sure to update it to follow the progress throughout the summer. That's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.